We've all heard the empty, I'm sorry you feel that way, or the classic, I didn't mean to. Today, we're talking about the kind of apology that actually heals, not just smooths things over. Before we get into that, just gonna read a review from an Apple podcast listener. One of the things he said is this podcast is one of my favorites because not only is it a great example of clear communication, but you can apply it to so many aspects of your life. I've seen for myself the use of skills taught in the podcast and other areas outside of my work. It's really nice to be able to learn and quickly add the tools into any conversation with others and even myself. It helps you pause and take a second to become more present and less wrapped up in your own feelings or reactions. 12 out of 10 would recommend. I didn't read that part earlier. Woo woo, 12 out of 10. Thank you so much for leaving this review. One of the things that I am so happy that you are able to do is to use these in areas outside of your work. So thank you so much for taking that, being brave, and just taking that leap and doing things that might be a little bit out of your comfort zone. Appreciate that.
Welcome to Communication Skills for Working Women. I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Rose May. Do you find yourself second guessing or avoiding conversations because you're worried about being misunderstood?
You're not alone. On this show, we're sharing tangible tools for assertiveness, emotional resilience, and real-life communication wins and fails.
Let's sharpen our communication together.
The words "I'm sorry" can heal, and they can also really hurt. I don't know about any of you, but I've been told that I'm sorry by someone else before, and I have felt anything but like peace or ease from that sorry, from that apology. I've felt angry and frustration. And then there have also been moments when someone has come to me and apologized, and I have felt every feeling of hurt or anger just completely melt away. I'm assuming I'm not the only one that has had both of those experiences, and and apologies can really connect us. They can also really divide us and really build up walls. Today, we are going to talk about apologies that heal and connect us at work and at home, and maybe just in any area of our life. So, there was this time that I really hurt someone. I actually feel like I hurt someone this weekend, even. And we're not talking about that one. We're talking about a different time that I hurt someone. And this was an individual that I really care about, not a family member, someone that I worked closely with. I had given them, we were working on this big project. It was a big event, and I had given them an assignment which was more last minute than we had planned on. Someone had not been able to do what they said they were going to do, and they had pulled out a couple weeks before, like a week before, and I made this assignment to someone else, and I felt like they were capable and prepared, and I just felt like there was like we couldn't go wrong with asking these people to fill in here, and they didn't feel that same way. And the day of, they told me they felt it was unfair and they felt that it was too last minute and that I didn't give them the preparation that I had given everybody else. And I I didn't mean to do this, but I dismissed their feelings in that moment. And I really just said like, oh, I didn't mean for it to like come across this way. You can totally do this and it's gonna be great. And I'm really sorry. I remember standing there and saying, like, I still remember standing there and saying these things and feeling, even as the words were coming out of my mouth, that, like, I'm like, this doesn't feel right. But, like, I do mean this, but it just didn't feel right. And I realized that I wasn't acknowledging at all their feelings, their distress, their experience. I was so focused on just moving forward with what had to get done, that the words really were empty because I was just like, I'm sorry, but you got this. And that was not, it wasn't helpful at all. So I
Mm.
truly, when you step back and look at the situation, I was more concerned on defending kind of myself instead of taking ownership and saying, I am so sorry. You are right. I didn't give you the same type of prep that I gave everybody else. I am so sorry. I didn't realize that you didn't feel prepared. In what ways do you not feel prepared? I didn't pause. I didn't get curious. I didn't do any of these skills that we talk about. I just was so focused on making sure that we just kept moving. I just was so like really probably stressed is really probably what I was. I needed to just get everybody moving. And I wasn't clear with myself on how I needed to show up in that situation. If I would have paused and thought about it, I probably would have showed up differently. So there's a really not great example of something that I did. And let's talk about it.
Honestly, I mean, I think we're taught to, I don't know if I'm going to say we. I know I was taught to apologize when you've done something wrong. I don't know that I have ever been like really taught how to
Mhm.
apologize or even
Mhm.
had that modeled in a way, especially like culturally. First of all, like for example, parents don't apologize to their children. That's not a thing culturally that occurs for us. So I have maybe I can count on one hand like how many times like my parents have apologized to me, and I'm not saying this as a criticism. I'm just saying that I don't it hasn't been modeled for me in a way that would be more healing towards relationships. And so even as you're telling this story, I'm thinking, okay, yeah, our default is to want to explain ourselves because if I can share with you what was going on with me, then maybe you won't be so sad or mad or frustrated or disappointed in me. And maybe you'll have some context behind why I said what I said. Basically, I'm trying to, in other words, justifying my actions. I don't think that that's abnormal. I think the point in that is to help someone recognize that we aren't maliciously out to get them. And everything that needs to not happen in that situation. And
Right.
so hard.
Right. Because it's about us then, right? Like
Right. Right.
I wanted her to know that like what do you mean? Like you're capable. Like I believe in you. I da da da. Not at
Yeah.
all taking ownership that my actions had a negative impact on her.
Yes. Yes. And that is something that I have been taught in running group therapy is
Mhm.
to speak on the impact of my actions. And every time I can stop and reframe that, it becomes easier for me to give a sincere apology. So let's break down what a sincere apology is, or at least what we believe or what we think could be helpful with a sincere apology. So first taking ownership, like you said, being clear with yourself, with your own actions, and really just taking accountability of that. I was wrong to speak to you in that way, or anything along those lines where you are taking responsibility for yourself. The classic, I'm sorry if I hurt you. And I'm going to be the first one to say I've been guilty of this. I can think specifically of an example with my partner where I said this, and he was like, "Why did you say that? Like, that's not even sincere." And I was like, grumble, grumble, grumble. Um, I've tried really hard to stay away from I'm sorry if I hurt you. You hurt someone. And
Mhm.
it doesn't matter the reason why you think maybe you didn't or you shouldn't or you couldn't have. You hurt someone. Apologize for hurting someone, right? Taking ownership of the exchange or what the impact of your exchange has had on that person.
I think ownership is challenging as well because you're not responsible for how someone else responds to you.
No,
Like you're not, and your your actions can negatively impact someone, right?
for sure.
So you're holding this paradox, which can
It's a
sometimes feel
tricky,
uncomfortable.
yeah, it's a tricky space.
And there's times when you do behave in a way that you feel like you're just being straightforward and communicating clearly and it lands wrong and it like really you didn't do anything wrong, but it was maybe even triggering for someone.
Yeah,
You can still own that your behavior negatively impacted someone. And it's
absolutely.
not, you're not owning their feelings. You're
Right.
owning that the way you showed up had a negative impact. It feels really good to take ownership
Yeah.
of the impact of your behavior.
Good and uncomfortable.
Yes, definitely uncomfortable, a little humbling even.
For sure humbling, yes.
Yes.
But it really does force you to step outside of yourself. If you can take the time to pause and
Mhm.
ask yourself what do I need to take up what do I need to take ownership of in this moment? It really does help you step outside of yourself, which I think is the catalyst for building and cementing or even like maintaining good relationships with people.
Absolutely. And when you're clear on what you want those relationships to be, at work, what do I want these relationships to look like? At
Yeah,
home, what do I want these relationships to look like? With the teacher, with the
yeah,
doctor, with your cashier. I mean, there's people in our lives we interact with all the time.
yeah.
What do we want those relationships to look like? And when we're clear on that, we can take ownership of our behavior because then you're like, oh, I really didn't want this negative impact to happen. So I'm clear on this and I'm going to own that my behavior negatively impacted you. And I'm genuinely sorry that the way I behaved impacted you in this way.
Hmm. Yeah,
All right. We could talk a long time on ownership, I think.
yeah,
Probably
yeah.
do a whole episode
Whole
on ownership.
podcast.
But we're going to move through a few other um, aspects of an apology. Empathy. Consider how the other person could have or did feel. We kind of touched on this a little bit with ownership, but it's a little bit different of stepping back and pausing and taking a minute to really think, how could I have come across this way? Instead of your intent of like how you wanted to come across, but maybe how could this have been received? You could say something along the lines of, I can see how that made you feel dismissed and unseen. You don't say, that wasn't my intention. That's what I say. That's not what I meant.
I say that
Not
all the time.
right.
And
That
then I
wasn't
get
my
mad.
intention.
Yeah, I get mad because I'm like, dummy, don't you see that wasn't my intention? Yeah, it gets progressively worse as we go through these steps. I'm just gonna stop talking.
So instead of that wasn't my intention, that example again is I can see how that made you feel dismissed and unseen. Or I can see how that made you feel whatever they expressed. Instead of just, you're really parroting back to them what they said.
Hmm.
Instead of that wasn't my intention, what you're doing is parroting back. I can see how that made you feel, ba ba ba. Or if you don't want to say that made you feel, because those words get tricky for some people, you can say, I can see how you felt.
Yeah. And
Because then,
also, you really got to try to see it.
absolutely, if you're not sincere and
Yeah.
you didn't pause to actually see it or recognize that, don't even
Don't
express
even
it.
just walk
Just
away.
skip it.
Just
Just
walk.
skip it. Another one is to not be defensive. Okay, so no defensiveness. Again, you have to have clarity if you're not going to be defensive. You
Mm.
absolutely have to have clarity in what type of relationship you want to have, what you want to accomplish, if there won't be feelings of defensiveness. So avoid explaining or justifying in the moment. There may be time for context later, but when you're in the midst of that apology, it's not about them. So be really, really clear on the type of relationship you want to have and own it and show empathy.
And one thing about like the context for later, there's also the possibility that there may never be context. You may never have an opportunity that is provided for you to bring in the context of your words. And that is really hard because it leaves us feeling unresolved. And
Hmm.
sometimes And I think it's we feel unresolved because we feel like we have to provide context. And so even stepping away with the discomfort, and I'm speaking for myself, stepping away from the discomfort of not being able to give your context is so hard. And sometimes that is exactly what is required, especially if you're trying to repair, which is the next step, like learning to repair. What do you need from me to rebuild trust? Or how can I make this right? Again, these are not empty words. These are words that no matter what your relationship is like with a person, when you have clarity about what you want that relationship to be, you can go back to that foundation of knowing what you want this to be, and that how can I rebuild trust or how can I make this right actually feel sincere. So as a group leader, I run like many group, like therapy groups. In the moment is a lot of our processing. So whatever is coming up in the moment, however it's coming up, there are times when I have said something or I have done something that has really hurt another group member. And there is nothing more painful than being confronted by not I don't want to say by group members, but in the moment in front of other people as someone who's supposed to be the expert, like just knowing that you've done something or you've said something wrong. It's 1,000% awkward and it 1,000% makes you kind of step back and confront your own personal issues or insecurities in that moment. It's a really uncomfortable position. This is what I'm trying to say. But one of the things that I've had to learn is that those are the moments that those are the most important moments that I, as a group leader, can build trust with other people around me, with other group members. And so taking that time to actually ask what you can do to rebuild trust and being sincere about that and following through is one of the most important things that you can do. And recognizing that everybody is going to have something different or need something different from you. And that's
Mhm.
okay too.
And two, another thing with repair that I have learned over the years is you need to take some time to repair with yourself. You need
Yeah.
to reset with your values and you need to filter your actions through your values. And were they in alignment with the person you want to be? And if they were, then you can be at peace, right? But
Yep.
if they weren't, what changes do you need to make for you? Because as Rosemary said, everyone's going to need something different. And
Yeah.
sometimes when you ask someone in repair, like, what do you need from me? Sometimes they're not at the point where they can actually express that yet.
Yeah.
Or
Or where
they
they
may
want to
not even know,
yeah, or they don't want to repair with you. I've
or they
had,
don't want to.
yes, I've had one specific time in my life when someone has said, I do not want to repair with you. And I was devastated. And
Mm,
also, I had to step back and let them do their thing. Yeah,
yeah.
that was rough.
It is hard. It's really hard when the other person doesn't want to repair the
Yeah,
relationship. And I think too, so that was a very specific, I don't want to repair. I think a lot of times people don't know how to repair.
for sure.
And
For
so
sure.
even when you're like, what do you need from me? Again, they really may not know. So it's
Mhm.
really important for you to go back to your values and be like, wait, what do I need for me to show up as the person that I want to be in this relationship?
For sure. For sure.
So this moves into our changed behavior. So really the most powerful part of an apology comes over time as you continue to interact with that individual and your behavior changes. I can think of a million examples of just trying, failing, and adjusting in more professional settings, in interpersonal settings at home. I mean, really in your professional settings too. It's all interpersonal.
Hmm.
And people appreciate it when you try, even if you mess up again. Like
Yeah.
I have really big emotions and feelings. And there are times when those big emotions and feelings show up in unhelpful situations, right? And I have learned most of the time how to regulate myself. And there are times they show up big and I don't.
Yeah. Same.
And that repair, I'm sorry that I showed up that way. I can tell that that really hurt. Like just owning, just saying, I should not have behaved in that way. And I am really sorry that it had such a negative impact in this meeting. Like, everyone messes up. And
Yeah.
so when you genuinely put yourself out there and apologize, I mean, a lot of the time people are pretty forgiving.
I would say the majority of the time people are pretty understanding. Yeah. Yeah. So, as you're embarking on this journey, a few things to avoid. I'm sorry you feel that way. That minimizes people's experiences. Explain to yourself, but I didn't mean to. That centers you instead of them. I guess I should say I'm sorry. Please don't ever say that. If you've ever said that, I mean, that's so sarcastic. Nobody's going to want to listen to you or repair anything or feel sincere or even over apologizing or groveling. So it makes it about your guilt rather than your pain. We're going to have these steps in the show notes for you. So if you're thinking about employing any of these in the next couple of days, you will have that outline for you in the show notes. But stay away from those. I feel like that's common sense, but at the same time, like during our interactions, when you're ruled by emotions, sometimes common sense goes out the window.
It
So,
really does.
yes, there's that for you.
And forgive yourself and pause and pivot if you need to. It's
Yeah.
okay. You can
Yeah,
be in the middle of one of these, I'm sorry you feel that way, and you can say, wait, that's not what I meant. And you can try again.
exactly.
Here's your assignment for this week. Think of one apology you've given or received. So take some time to reflect on an apology or that you've given or received that didn't fully land, and then ask yourself what was missing. So just now that you're out of the situation, take some time to reflect back in and try to identify what was going on. And if you can or need to, maybe you can take an opportunity to repair with that person. You can share with them your reflection. You could share with them this podcast and say, hey, when I listened to this, I realized something. And I actually, I'm going to share a little story here. I was working with a woman like 6 years ago. And in those moments 6 years ago, I really thought that I was right and had things together. And over the last 6 years, I've learned things and I've noticed things. And I just kept feeling like, oh my gosh, I really was not a good leader. I really, in this situation with this woman, and I was like, I really need to call and apologize to her. And I called her, and it was, I don't know, now 6 months ago now that I called her. And I just said, hey, I want you to know when we were working together, I realize now that my behavior was really hurtful. And I'm really, really sorry for the way that I treated you and the way that I showed up during that time. She was so gracious, and it has changed the dynamic of our relationship now. We're not like hanging out and things like that, but it feels different when we interact. I don't know if it feels different to her, but it feels different to me now when we interact. And so I would say it's never too late to
No,
apologize.
never too late for a sorry note, man. I'm always
No,
like, I think about things and I'm like, that person deserves a sorry note. I will write a sorry note. Yeah.
yeah. And that's repair. And again, I don't know if it did any repair for her. Like our relationship, I wouldn't say has changed. Looking at us, no one would notice probably a change in our relationship, but it
Hmm.
repaired me back to more of me being in alignment with my values. And I hope that it did something for her as well. But externally, I don't know.
Yeah. That's really nice, actually. I'm picturing that feeling of like the interaction that's different. I can feel that. I know what that feels like when the
Yeah.
interaction has changed. Yeah. So
Yes.
listen, people, we all mess up. I mean, we're humans. This is the nature of our existence. What matters is how we make it right. Real apologies are super uncomfortable. So if you are feeling extremely uncomfortable, you're probably doing a great job. They're also one of the most courageous and connective things we can offer to someone else, and also to ourselves. So If this episode has helped shift your perspective about apologies, I know it actually has with me, share it with someone who needs it. And if you haven't yet, hit follow and leave a review. Let's keep building emotionally healthy relationships together. Connect with us on Instagram at Communication Skills for Women, or send us an email at communicationskillsforwomen@gmail.com, or check out our website for more personalized coaching at communicateconnectthrive.com. Until next time, speak clearly and listen bravely. When you feel confident in your communication, everything changes.
We'd love to hear your wins, failures, and insights on Instagram at Communication Skills for Women. Leave a review and connect with us.
Until next time, speak clearly and listen bravely.